Dear students, yesterday or in the previous class we discussed some terms which are used to describe an angiospermic plant. In the first class I have explained you to describe the terms used to describe the vegetative part of the plant, and in the second class, along with the leaf, the portion remaining in the leaf part, I continued with the words used to describe the flower, and today I am going to continue with the words used to describe the flower itself. That's a continuation of the previous class. Firstly, you are going to check whether the flower has a stalk or not. Accordingly, you are going to describe it as pedicellate or a sessile flower. If you write it as pedicellate, then it indicates that the flower is having a distinct stalk. And if there is no stalk, the flower is to be described as sessile flower. That is the first word. Next to that, the bract. Bracteate flower or ebracteate flower. The bract is one small leaf-like structure found at the base of the flower, always found singly, and if the bract is present, the flower must be described as a bracteate flower, and if that is absent, then the flower is to be described as ebracteate. Along with this, if you find two more small leaf-like structures very similar to bract, but they are always found in pair, those structures are called as bracteoles. And if the bracteole is present, the flower is to be described as bracteolate flower, and if it is absent, it is to be described as ebracteolate. Then the next word which you have learned is called as complete flower, or it can be called as an incomplete flower. Complete flower is the one which is consisting of all four whorls of the flower: calyx, corolla, androecium and gynoecium. If all four parts of the flower are present in one flower, just example, you can take the example of hibiscus flower, where you will get calyx there, green outermost covering, colorful part, corolla, the top you find stamens, androecium, and internally you will find the gynoecium. If all these four parts are present in a flower, the flower is to be called as a complete flower. If any one of the whorl is absent or lacking, in that case it is to be called as incomplete flower. I have given examples in the previous class itself. You might have taken down the examples. The next word to describe the flower is whether the flower is unisexual or bisexual. This is dependent upon the presence of reproductive parts in a flower, because flower itself is defined as a reproductive part of the plant, so that it will contain male and female reproductive structure, and the male reproductive parts are called as androecium, made up of stamens. The female reproductive part is called as gynoecium, and it is made up of carpels. Now you have to check whether the flower is consisting of both androecium and gynoecium together in one flower, or the two reproductive structures are present on two different flowers. Unisex, the flower having only one sex, one reproductive structure. Either it may contain the stamen or it may contain the gynoecium. Accordingly, you are going to call the flower as male if it is having only stamens, and you are going to describe the flower as female if it is containing only the gynoecium or carpels. In that case, the flower is to be described as unisexual. If you write it as unisexual, then comes the question whether both the male and female flowers are produced on one plant, on the same plant, or the plants are different. Accordingly, the terminology is going to change now. The tree or the plant which is going to hold both male and female flowers together on the same, then it is to be called as monoecious plant. Mono, again, it is single. Single plant is going to bear both male and female flowers, so that it is called as monoecious. If the two plants are entirely different, the male plant is entirely different from female, in that case it is to be called as dioecious plant. This is connected with the plant, not with the flower. It comes when you describe the flower as unisexual. Okay, if the flower is unisexual, you have to check and and find out whether the plant is one or the plants are two. Monoecious, bearing both male and female flowers on the same plant, a single plant. And if the male plant is different from female, date is an example. Very specific example is date palm. Khurjura is the example for the dioecious nature. The male plant is different from the female plant. And if the flower is consisting of both male and female reproductive parts in one, bisexual, having two sexes, by two, both androecium and gynoecium together in one flower, then it is to be called as, accordingly, it should be called as a bisexual flower. No further description, just it is a bisexual flower. I will continue with the next part of studying the flower. The next word to describe the flower is whether the flower is regular or irregular. Or now we can start with the symmetry of the flower. Based on the symmetry of the flower. The symmetry means the arrangement of all parts. Proper arrangement. The arrangement of all parts. Calyx, corolla, androecium, gynoecium. There is a proper arrangement of all these parts of the flower. And that is called a symmetry. So based on the symmetry of the flower may be regular or irregular. Okay? Or another word which is commonly used is called as actinomorphic or zygomorphic. Actinomorphic or zygomorphic. Now, almost they can be used as synonyms, but we use both the terms, regular, actinomorphic flower. The meaning is same actually. The actinomorphic flower means the flower which can be cut into two equal halves in any plane. ಯಾವ angle ನಲ್ಲಿ cut ಮಾಡಿದ್ರು ಕೂಡ you must be able to make out two equal parts in one flower. For example, okay, this is a mustard flower, right? And in this case, this flower can be cut into two equal parts in this plane. It can be cut into two equal parts in this plane, or in this plane, or in this plane. Okay? So if you can cut the flower into two equal parts in any plane, any angle, then such flower is to be called as actinomorphic flower. Why? What is the reason behind this? Why it can be cut into two equal parts in any angle? Because all the floral parts, maybe 5 sepals in the calyx, 5 petals in the calyx, or it may be 4 in number. You need not worry about the number of floral parts there. So calyx made up of sepals, petals are found in corolla, androecium is consisting of stamens, the gynoecium is consisting of carpels. And if all these units of the whorl are alike, very similar with respect to their size, shape, everything, in that case it can be cut into two equal parts. And the flower is to be described as actinomorphic, or it can be called as a regular flower. An example can be seen in case of mustard, hibiscus, vinca are example for the actinomorphic flower. The next word, you can use both the word regular, actinomorphic, and these are the examples. Now irregular or zygomorphic. And zygomorphic flower is the one which can be cut into two equal parts in only one angle. Only one angle. If you can cut if you want to cut a zygomorphic flower into two parts, you can take the section only in one angle, not in any other angle. Any angle, then it must be actinomorphic. And why this happens so? And in this case, you can make out. This is because in case of the salvia flower, salvia or leucus, because all of you might have seen the leucus flower. Tumbe is a leucus flower. Salvia is also an ornamental plant. And also another example, the other examples for this kind of flower is found in case of all these family leguminous members, where the papilionaceous corolla is of common occurrence. All these grams, green gram, black gram, tur dal, and all these beans, alsande, all varieties of beans, and they have a different kind of flower. And in such kind of flower, this is a corolla of this flower, leucus flower, you can find there is a different shape and size in the corolla. This is corolla actually. This is corolla, and this is the calyx. See, the calyx is maybe in outline, and it is a kind of a slant or oblique kind of structure, and it's a protective covering. And corolla, you will find different kinds of, you are going to get different shape of the corolla, petals, different size of the petal is found in this case. And another example is, this is found in case of leucus. And if you want to cut this flower into two equal parts, you have to cut it only in this angle. You can't cut this into two parts in this angle. You have to cut it only lateral view, laterally. Laterally, if you want to cut the flower into two equal parts, you can cut it only in this angle. I'll give you one more example. For example, papilionaceous corolla, papilionaceae family members. All the papilionaceae family members are made up of three different types of petals. There are three different types of petals in papilionaceous corolla like this. You might have seen Shankha-pushpa. Okay. See, these are the three types of petals. This petal is the largest one, called as standard petal. These two are called as winged petals, and these two are called as keel petals. Just check, is it possible to cut this flower into two equal parts in any angle? No, it can be cut into two equal parts only in this plane, not in any other plane. And in that case, the flower becomes zygomorphic, right? Actinomorphic, the flower can be cut into two equal parts in any angle, whereas zygomorphic means it can be cut into two equal parts but in only one angle. Then the flower is to be called as zygomorphic, or the flower can be also called as irregular flower because of its irregular size and shape. See, these two petals are of one size and shape, these two are of different size, and this is one having very big expanded structure. And if you find such kind of variation in calyx and corolla, in that case all flowers cannot become actinomorphic, or it cannot be cut into two equal parts in any angle. Only one angle we can cut it into two parts, and hence it is to be called as the zygomorphic, or it is an irregular type of flower. An example for this flower is pea flower. You can write pea, crotalaria. Crotalaria is an example. Clitoria is example. Clitoria is Shankha-pushpa. Shankha-pushpa is called as clitoria. The clitoria, crotalaria, all of you have seen crotalaria. You have studied crotalaria in PUC, I think. A small wild plant growing around the roadside. And this is going to produce a pod having a small seeds which gives a typical kind of sound. And that plant is called as crotalaria. And the crotalaria, pea plant, clitoria are characterized by this kind of corolla, whereas this is found in case of tulsi. Even tulsi, leucus, salvia are examples for such kind of arrangement, and the flowers are called as zygomorphic in nature. Then, in addition to these two, there is one more type of flower. The third type of flower, which is also irregular, actually it is also irregular, but it is called as asymmetric flower. Here the A is present, asymmetric flower, and it means that there is no proper symmetry in the flower. They are not arranged in a proper manner. They are not of same size and shape. If you find 10 parts in the flower, 10 parts will be of different size and shape. And in that case, the flower is to be called as asymmetric. Means the flower cannot be cut into two equal parts. It cannot be cut into two equal parts. You can try and check. It cannot be cut into two equal parts, and in that case it is to be called as asymmetric flower. And this is found in the common garden plant that is called as kenna. Kapale or kalpale is called as with colorful flowers. All this common plant of a garden, in the garden it's commonly found, and the plant is having very attractive flowers, colorful flowers, but the flowers are made up of different parts. All the parts are not symmetrically arranged. That is very perfect example for asymmetric arrangement of the flower, where it cannot be cut into two equal parts. So, based on the symmetry of the flower, either the flower may be actinomorphic, or it may be zygomorphic, or it may be asymmetric. Okay, regular or the irregular type of flower. Then the next part of study, the flower is based on the insertion of floral parts. Insertion of floral parts on the thalamus. Okay, insertion of floral parts on the thalamus. Right? So, based on the insertion of floral parts on the, you know, the flower is made up of 4 different whorls: the calyx, corolla, and raceme, and gynoecium. So, based on the insertion of all these 4 parts of the thalamus, what is the thalamus now? The thalamus is the axis of the flower. Okay, axis of the flower is called as the thalamus. Axis, the stem. For example, shoot system. Shoot system is having an axis in the center, that is stem. Stem can be differentiated into nodes and internodes. At every nodal region, we find the leaves. So that is the arrangement over the shoot. In a similar manner, the flower is also having an axis in the center, but it is not visible in many a case. It is highly condensed, and very rarely you will come to know the examples in which the axis is visible. In all the flowers, it is not visible. The axis of the flower is called as thalamus because it is highly condensed part of the flower. Okay, the thalamus. And on the thalamus, the floral parts are arranged in a proper manner, or they are inserted over the thalamus. Based on that, the flower can be described by using 3 different terminologies. The first one is called as hypogynous flower. The second is called as perigynous. The third type of flower is called as epigynous flower. Okay? There are 3 different types of flowers: hypogynous flower, the perigynous flower, and epigynous flower. These are the 3 different types of flowers based on the insertion of floral parts on the thalamus or on the axis. Okay? I'll start with the first one, hypogynous. In case of hypogynous flower, the first character of the hypogynous flower is, write down the character for a hypogynous flower. Hypogynous flower is having a thalamus which is convex disc-like structure. I'll draw the diagram over here. So this is the thalamus, right? Convex disc-like structure. And on this convex disc-like highly reduced thalamus, this is the innermost part of the flower, the gynoecium. Okay? The gynoecium is made up of ovary, style, and stigma. You can see this is the ovary, this is the style, and this is the stigma. And the ovary is placed on the top of the thalamus now. It is present on the elevated portion of the thalamus. Now, from the base of the ovary, the stamen which is arising, the petal, and the sepal. Okay? Label all the parts. This is thalamus, sepal is a unit of the calyx, petal, unit of the corolla, this is the stamen, and this is the ovary, style, and stigma. Now, in this diagram, can you make out which part of the flower out of 4, calyx, corolla, and raceme and gynoecium, which part of the flower is is going to occupy the topmost position in the flower of the thalamus. Not with respect to height. If I ask the question with respect to height, then you will definitely say that this is stigma because it is on the top. It is with respect to its position on the thalamus, placement on the thalamus. Now the thalamus has become the first important character of hypogynous flower is thalamus becomes a convex disc-like structure. The next character is the ovary is situated on the top of the thalamus or on the elevated portion of the thalamus. From the base of the ovary, the stamen, the petal and the calyx is going to arise. So that the ovary occupies the topmost position on the thalamus. That is why that kind of flower is called as hypogynous. This you will come to know when you take a perfect vertical section of the flower. If you dissect the flower into two equal parts and then observe the placement, the ovary will be on the top of the thalamus and hence the flower is called as hypogynous. And in this case, example for this type of flower is mustard again, hibiscus, vinca rosea, mango. They are all example for the hypogynous flower. Okay. The second one, perigynous flower. Peri meaning is half. In case of perigynous flower, the thalamus becomes a slight depression holding concave cup-like structure. Okay, now the thalamus changes its shape. Instead of becoming dome-shaped structure, becoming a convex disc-like structure, it has become a shallow cup, slight depression in the center. Now this is the thalamus. Okay, on this thalamus, now the different floral parts. Let me draw the ovary first. Now this is the ovary. Can you make out the position now? And the difference between this ovary and this. You can make out half of the ovaries is embedded in the thalamus cup. Half of the ovary is above the thalamus cup. Okay. This much portion of the ovary is out of the cup. This is inside the cup. Half is embedded and half is out. So it is peri. The word is peri. With respect to the other floral parts now, the stamen, the petal and the calyx. Okay. So the character of the perigynous flower is the thalamus becomes a shallow cup-like structure with a slight depression in the center. The next character is the ovary. Half of the ovary is embedded inside the thalamus cup, half stands above the thalamus cup. The remaining three parts, the stamen, the petal and the calyx, sepal, they arise from the rim of the thalamus cup. Rim, okay, it's the edge of the thalamus cup. Rim of the thalamus cup. So this kind of flower is called as perigynous. Half of the ovary is inside and half comes outside the flower. So this type of flower is called as perigynous. And this is characteristically found in all species of rose. Rose is an example for the perigynous condition of the flower. Okay. To make it out, this is ovary. You can put ovules inside the ovary. Okay. Need not leave it empty. You can fill it with ovules so that you can make out this is ovary part of the flower. Third type, epigynous kind of flower. Epigynous. Again, now this is the thalamus cup. Okay. Thalamus is going to change its shape now. Entirely different. The thalamus becomes a cup with a deep depression. Okay, with a deep depression. It's a cup-like structure having a deep depression in the center. And inside this thalamus cup, the ovary is situated. Okay. Can you make out the difference between epi and perigynous flower? In case of perigynous flower, half of the ovary is embedded in the thalamus, half stands above the thalamus. In this case, the whole ovary is enveloped by the thalamus cup, completely enveloped by the thalamus cup because thalamus cup is having a deep depression in the center. And in the cup, depression of the cup, it is completely enveloping the ovary part and only the style and stigma it has come out of the thalamus cup. And then the remaining parts now, the stamen, okay, the corolla and the calyx. You can make out the difference. Side by side you draw the 3 diagrams, draw down the diagrams, when you observe the video, draw the diagrams on your notebook, label all the parts just to go through the diagram, that's it. If you have simple knowledge of the diagram, how to draw these diagrams, you can explain all the characters by using your own words. You need not refer any text, or you need not write down, make a pages together notes for this morphology part. Very interesting part. Only thing is you must be able to draw the diagram, that's it. If you can draw the diagram, can't you explain it by using your own words? You can make out this is a Perignus flower and this is an Epignus flower. Now the whole dimension can be seen below the flower. Here, this is the ovary, this is the thalamus. But ultimately, this whole structure is going to develop into a fruit, holding all the floral parts on the top. The position of the other parts is the calyx, corolla and androecium. They arise from the top of the thalamus curve, here. Okay? This kind of flowers are many. You can quote many of the examples. If you have seen, you can write down. If you have seen such kind of flower, then you can write down the examples. I'll give the example. Guava, Cedium guava, where lies an example. Apple is an example for this kind of flower. Apple, guava, all cucurbits. All cucurbits. All these cucurbits means cucumber, bitter gourd, snake gourd, ridge gourd. All of them they belong to Cucurbitaceae family. All the members of Cucurbitaceae, guava, apple are example for the epigynous condition of the flower. You will find a calyx on the top of the guava. You will find dried corolla or stamens on the top of the apple. And that is the nature why the flower is called as an epigynous flower. Okay? So this is one 10-mark question. Describe the different kinds of flowers based on the insertion of floral parts of the thalamus. Or they may ask one flower, hypogynous flower, or epigynous flower, or a perigynous flower. You can't change the examples, right? Hypogynous flower having the thalamus on the top of the ovary on the top of the thalamus. Perigynous flower, half of the ovary is inside the cup and half is outside the cup. So it is peri. Third case, the whole ovary is embedded in the thalamus cup. So the flower is called as epigynous in nature. Based on this, again I am going to add one more word along with these diagrams, hypogynous word. When you describe the flower, you are going to describe it as hypogynous. This is the condition of the ovary here. And in this case, when you are explaining the characters of one family or one plant, in the last part of description, you are going to describe the gynoecium. And in the gynoecium case, ovary case, you have to describe whether the ovary is superior, semi-superior or inferior. These are the 3 cases. You are going to explain it, use these terms when you are explaining the ovary of the flower. Okay? And there is a very close intimacy or relationship between these 2 terminologies. Okay, so I have written side by side. And it means that if you have described the flower as hypogynous, ovary must be superior in nature. And if you have described the flower as perigynous, the ovary must be semi-superior. And if it is epigynous flower, the ovary must be inferior. Here it is superior because it is on the top of the thalamus. Here it is semi-superior, or you can write it as semi-inferior also. Semi or peri, half. Half is inside, half is outside. This is inferior because the ovary is going to occupy the lowermost part of the flower, bottom of the flower. It is found at the bottom of the flower. You can count the number of cucumbers which are going to be produced in your home garden, the cucumber plant. Because you can see the sautekai or tondekai. You can see the kai on the basal part of the female flowers. So that condition is called as the epigynous flower, and compulsorily, if you have described the flower as hypogynous, you must explain the ovary as superior. If it is perigynous, it must be semi-superior. If it is epigynous, it must be inferior in nature. Okay? Remember the terms very carefully. Use the terminology, you must use the terms very carefully because every word has got its own meaning. You cannot interchange the examples or the terminologies. Okay, then the next word to describe the flower is, and you can mention the color. The last part of the description of the flower is the color of the flower. You can mention. So brightly colored, or dull in color, or green in color. You can mention the exact color of the flower. Okay. Now, by using all these terminologies, I am going to explain the hibiscus flower. It's a most common flower. You compare the terminology and try to explain any other flower which you can get at your home and try to explain the flower by using all these terms. Okay? I'll explain the hibiscus flower. Hibiscus. Okay? Now, hibiscus flower is pedicellate, bracteate, bracteolate, actinomorphic, bisexual, hypogynous, attractively, colorful, and one word I have not explained, I will explain right now, and pentamerous. Okay, this is the description for a hibiscus flower. If you describe the hibiscus flower or any flower, what you get at your home or around the campus or on the roadside, collect the flower, observe all the parts, try to understand the word, meaning of the word, and explain the flower. And nobody can understand except the students who are studying botany. They can understand the meaning of these terminologies. Nobody can understand. This is a stenography, just stenography. Pedicellate, bracteate, bracteolate, actinomorphic, bisexual, hypogynous, attractively colorful, everybody can make out, and pentamerous in nature. So what I left is the pentamerous condition. Okay? To describe this, why it is a pentamerous flower. You are going to count, because I am going to continue with calyx, corolla, and gynoecium separately. You are going to study all the whorls separate. Okay? So you are going to count the number of sepals in the flower, number of petals in the flower, andrecium, the gynoecium, number of carpels, etc. By counting all these floral parts, you will give a number to the flower, that is penta. You can make one. This is 5. Meaning is the floral parts are in 5s. All of you have seen hibiscus. Calyx is made up of 5 sepals, corolla is made up of 5 petals, andrecium is many in number, of course. They are not only 5 in number, but the carpels are 5 in number. I will describe why this part is that. So now these are the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 9 words. By using 9 words, you can explain a hibiscus flower. Okay? Now, with respect to the pentamerous condition, or depending upon, okay, subheading here, number of floral parts. Okay, based on the number of floral parts, you can use different terminology to explain the flower. Trimerous, tetramerous, and pentamerous. There are only 3 different words to explain 3 different types of flowers. There are no 2 dimerous or more than 5 polymerous and so on. Okay? Now, the meaning of this trimerous, you can make out tri is 3. Okay? If the floral parts are in 3s or multiples of 3s, 3, 6, 9, 12 and so on. 3s or multiples of 3s. Okay? In that case, the flower is to be called as trimerous in nature. Most of the monocots, for example, coconut and arecanut. All of you have seen coconut course, ultimately only one carpel is going to develop. You have studied the same in third semester in embryology part of your syllabus. But it is tricarpellary ovary. The stamens are found in 6 numbers there. And the perianth are found in, so for example, I will write the explanation for this in case of coconut flower. The perianth, you will come to know what is perianth in the further part of the flower, the study of the flower. 3 plus 3, total 6. There will be 6 sepals arranged in 3 plus 3 condition. Stamens, 6. Carpels, 3. So what happens? The condition is the floral parts, if they are found in 3s or multiples of 3s, 3, 6, 9, 12 and so on, that is, the flower must be called as trimerous. You can write the examples of coconut, arecanut, lilies. All lilies are example for the trimerous condition of the flower. Now the tetramerous condition of the flower. And it doesn't mean that all parts must be in the same form. Suppose if one part is number is different, then it's okay, no problem. Maximum whorls must be in 3s or multiples of 3s or 4s or multiples of 4s. Now the next flower, the tetramerous condition of the flower. Tetra, you can make up the word 4s or multiples of 4s. Multiples of 4. Okay, then it is to be called as tetramerous condition of the flower. This is very characteristically found in mustard family. Mustard family is Brassicaceae. Brassicaceae is mustard family. Mustard, radish, notefold, cabbage, cauliflower, they are all the members of Brassicaceae family. And the entire family is characterized by tetramerous condition of the flower. You will not find this condition in any other family. Very important character of that family. And this tetramerous because here calyx is made up of 4 sepals. Okay, corolla is made up of 4 petals. Sorry. And androecium consisting of 4 plus 2 condition, equal to 6 there. Total number is 6, but there are only 2 different whorls. But the gynoecium is consisting of only 2 carpels. Forget about this. Okay, this one. Out of 4 whorls, 3 whorls are arranged made up of 4, 4, 4. That is why the flower is to be called as tetramerous in nature. And such kind of flowers are exclusively found in Brassicaceae family, mustard family. Now the pentamerous one. Just now I gave the example of hibiscus. All the floral parts in 5s or multiples of 5s. Why? The reason is, check the hibiscus flower and you can confirm if it definitely is a pentamerous flower. In case of hibiscus, sepals are 5, petals are 5, androecium many, carpels are 5. Okay? Forget about this. There are many. But remaining whorls 5, 5, 5. So the flower is to be called as pentamerous. So these are the 9 to 10 terms. By using 9 to 10 words, you can explain the flower taxonomically. This is how to explain the flower. Observe the characters, morphological features. You have to hold the flower in your hand, count the number of petals, count the number of sepals, androecium, gynoecium, take a section, write down all the characters, and then you are going to use the terms to describe the flower, and hence these are the terms to explain the flower. So you have learned 9 to 10 terminologies to explain the flower. So that completes the flower and its description. Now I'll begin with the first whorl of the flower, the calyx. Outermost part of the flower is calyx. Okay. Calyx is the green part of the flower. Generally it will be green in color. Very rarely it will be colorful in nature if it has got a role to play in the process of pollination. May be modified in many cases. But generally it will be green in color. The calyx is made up of sepals. The sepals are the units of calyx. Now to describe the calyx, first Take a flower, hold the flower in your hand, and first thing what you are going to do is, you are going to count the number of sepals. Okay? First you count the number, write down the number of sepals. What is the number of, exact number of, whether they are 3, 4 or 5 or more than 5. Right? Then the next thing is whether you are going to use the terminology now, polysepals or gamosepals. Okay? The two terms to be explained. That's the next thing. First thing is you have to write down 5 sepals. Sepals are 5. Sepals 5 or 5 sepals. Then you have to check whether it is polycephalous condition or gamosephalous condition. To describe the polycephalous condition, poly means free. Okay, gamma means fused. If the sepals are free in nature, I draw the free sepals. Suppose if you find 5 sepals in the calyx, if all the 5 sepals are like this, suppose if this is the calyx, having 5 sepals and all sepals are entirely free from each other, then this can be considered as free and you must describe the calyx as polycephalous. Okay? So this condition can be seen in case of, again mustard, I got the example of mustard only. Or you can give an example of Caesarpinia. Caesarpinia is an example for having polycephalous condition of the calyx. Gamo, fused. Hibiscus is the example. All of you have seen hibiscus calyx. And fine. It's a calyx of hibiscus flower. And if you check the tips, you can count the number of sepals here. They are 5 in number. But throughout the length, it is completely fused. If you have seen Tatsura flower, you will find very long calyx like this, holding the sepals like this. This is a condition called as the gamosephalous condition. Brinjal you have seen, all of you have seen brinjal, where the sepals are free, fused and tips are free, and that condition is to be called as gamosephalous in nature. After counting the number of sepals, they are going to check whether the sepals are free or they are fused. Then if they have any characteristic shape, that is to be explained. This is bell-like, okay, this is tubular. So you can explain the shapes of the calyx parallel. Apart from that, the next part, what is to be seen in the described in the calyx is the duration of the calyx. Duration of the calyx on the flower. Okay. ಎಷ್ಟೊತ್ತು calyx flower ಮೇಲೆ ಇರ್ತದೆ, ಒಂದಿನ ಇರ್ತದ, permanent ಆಗಿ ಇರ್ತದ ಅಥವಾ ಕೂಡಲೇ ಬಿದ್ದು ಹೋಗ್ತದ, that is the thing. And duration of calyx, based on that, the calyx can be described as caducous or fugacious. Okay. Second, deciduous. And the third is persistent. Okay. Duration of the calyx. Based on duration of calyx, caducous or fugacious. Pronounce properly. It is caducous or fugacious. If you say that the calyx is caducous or fugacious, the meaning is the calyx falls off immediately on blooming of the flower. Okay. It falls off immediately after blooming of the flower. Immediately when the flower blooms, the calyx falls off. And this happens in case of poppy. Poppy plant is, poppy flower is an example. For poppy is Gasgase. Gasgase is called as poppy, poppy seeds. And the poppy is an example for the fugacious or the caducous nature of the calyx. It falls off immediately on blooming of the flower. Deciduous, the second type. If the flower calyx falls off, very next day, along with the corolla, okay, next day, along with corolla, then the calyx is to be called as deciduous. Most common feature. Most of the flowering plants, they shed their calyx along with the corolla next day. Okay, it is going to fall off. So one is falls off immediately after blooming of the flower. Second is it falls off along with the corolla next day. The third is persistent, permanent. If the calyx remains permanently until the ripening of the fruit. Okay. So this is permanent. The calyx stays on the flower, it remains on the flower until the ripening of the fruit, the same, and then it is called as persistent kind of calyx. Lot of examples you will get: tomato, brinjal, chili. They are all examples for the persistent nature of the calyx. So here, the brinjal is a common example. All of you have seen brinjal. Tomato is also example for having persistent calyx. Okay. The calyx remains permanently along with the ripe fruit. Tomato kuda calyx irtade. So that is the permanent type of calyx. If it remains permanent, then comes two different words. Then you have to explain, you have to check. Marcescent, whether the calyx, this is connected only with the persistent calyx. Marcescent or accrescent. The word marcescent, if you describe the calyx as persistent, then comes the question whether the persistent calyx belongs to this type or this. Marcescent means if the calyx shrivels up as the fruit ripes. Perla is a good example. Perla, it will be live, very healthy calyx will be there. And if the calyx, as and the fruit is enlarging in its size, the fruit is proceeding towards the ripening. And in that case, during the entire course, the calyx gradually shrivels up. It shrinks, it shrivels, so that you will get a dried calyx on the top of guava. Guava fruit is a very characteristic example for marcescent kind of calyx, where the calyx is going to dry up in the ripe fruit. In the raw fruit, you can see some nature with for the sepal. There will be some shape to the sepal. There will not be any shape left when the fruit is completely ripe because it shrivels, and that kind of calyx is called as the marcescent kind of calyx, and this is found in case of guava. Then the accrescent kind of calyx, second type. In this case, as the fruit enlarges in size, the calyx also enlarges in size. Okay, as there is a correlation between the enlargement of the ovary as well as enlargement of the calyx. This is found in a plant called as physalis. Very common wild plant in our area, producing this kind of balloon-like fruit. Inside, all of you have seen this fruit. Just like, oh yeah, this is the fruit, and this is the calyx. The calyx is permanently on the fruit, but the calyx enlarges like a balloon as in relation to the enlargement of the fruit inside. And because of this, it's called as accrescent kind of calyx. This is the question when this question comes when the calyx is permanently remaining along with the fruit. Then whether you have to check whether it is a marcescent kind or it is an accrescent kind of calyx. Okay. Then the next word to describe the calyx is whether it is sepaloid or petaloid. Actually, this is related to the color of the sepals. Okay? If you write it as sepaloid, it is normal case. Normal. Sepaloid means the sepals must be green in color. It's a natural character, normal character of a flower. Sepals always they will be green in color. Very rarely they become colorful and modified for various other purposes. And if it is green, no problem. There is not an odd character. It's a natural character. Naturally, it will be sepaloid. Sepals must be green in color. Suppose instead of remaining green, it has developed color. It has become colorful because color is a characteristic property of petals. Actually, petals will be brightly colored in nature. And instead of having green color, if the calyx is petaloid, if you mention it as petaloid, it is colorful in nature. If the sepal becomes colorful, then it can be called as a petaloid kind of calyx. Calyx becomes petaloid. And then you can make out if it is becoming petaloid means it is helping in the process of pollination by becoming brightly colored part of the flower. This is found in case of a plant called as Musenda. M-U-S-S-A-E-N-D-A. Musenda is an example for the petaloid nature of the calyx, bilipatri. On the heads of a guard, on the roadside, you will find that one of the leaf will be white in color, very bright, colorful, white colored